Hey, my name is Jesus Castillo and this is a live stream. Today is Sunday, May the 24th. And in this video, we're going to talk about a few things. Specifically, I want to talk about a question I just got over email. That's how to handle arrays of arrays and hashes inside arrays, things like that. And then I want to talk about a little programming exercise, and we're going to see it both in Ruby and JavaScript, and we're going to study the differences so you can see how it works in both languages, and hopefully that will help you better understand both and learn something new. Okay, and also we're going to share a learning tip related to that, how you can improve your learning skills if you apply this one learning tip. Okay, so by the way, because this is a live stream, I will be reading the chat from time to time. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat, or you say hi or whatever you want to say. Okay, so let's do that. And by the way, this is my website, it's rubyguides.com. So if you enjoy this content, make sure to visit the website, subscribe to the newsletter, also subscribe to the channel, to this YouTube channel, and click the notification bell so you know when I go live and so you find out about new videos. Okay, and lastly, yeah, and you can find lots of contents in here. So let's go into the first thing I mentioned. So arrays of arrays. A lot of beginners have some issues with this, and that's fine. I'm going to cover what you need to know. So let's say we have something like this. Okay, so this is a regular array. And as you know, we can access the array elements using numerical indexes. So that means we start at 0. That means the first element. And the second element is 1, the next element is 2, right? We start at 0. So if you want 1, this number, what I have to write here, where I write 0, right? Probably know that already. Well, when we have nested arrays or multi-dimensional arrays, we do the same thing, as we see in a moment. So if you want the next number, I do 1, and there's a little trick that's very nice that you can do this in Ruby, and very useful is you can do -1, and that will always give you the last element. And as an alternative, you can use the last method. So you can say a.last, that also gives you the last element. So these and these are the same. These are equivalent statements in Ruby. And it's very nice because other languages don't allow you to do this. You have to actually get the array size and then do some basic arithmetic to find out which the last element is or what the index of the last element is. So that's just a little trick that you can use to work with array. Now, let me create a multi-dimensional array. What's that? Well, it looks something like this, right? It doesn't have to be exactly like this, but it can look like this. So when we say multidimensional or nested or two-dimensional, it has many names. I like multidimensional. We can tell because you have arrays inside arrays. And you can see the second array starts here because we have the square brackets, right? And it ends here because we have a closing square bracket. So this one sub-array. We can call this sub-arrays or internal arrays. Sub-arrays maybe it's more common. And we have how many? 3 of them. We have 3 sub-arrays inside another array. So this is a two-dimensional array because there are like 2 layers of array. And all of this is, remember that inside an array, you can have any elements. So we can combine the elements. We can have numbers, can have strings, we can have arrays, we can have hashes, we can have everything, every kind of, well, if I can have, well, try to find the hash there. You can have any kind of object mixed up inside this array. And that's why we can do this. Now, when we have them mixed up like this, or like this, it doesn't matter. It's still, they still have the same attributes, the same properties. So that means you can work with these objects in the same way that you can work with these objects when they are outside the multidimensional array. So let me show you exactly what that means with an example. So if I want, in this case, I want this number or this number. How do I get it? Well, first, I do the same thing as before. I do index 0. And this index 0 is going to get you this, because that's the index 0, right? The indexes or the elements in the array are separated by comma. So don't get confused by the array, by the internal array or superarray. Don't get confused by that. Just look where the commas are in the array, and that tells you, okay, this one element, so that means index 0. This another element, this another element. So the commas separate the elements inside the array. Once you know that, then if we want this element, then we get it just like if it was any other element. So it doesn't matter what this is, we can get it with the index 0, as you can see here. And what do we get? What do we get? Or what do you get as a result of this if you are following along? And I recommend that. Open Pry or IRB and just type some code and play around with this code. That's one of the best ways to learn, is to balance your theory, your reading, your watching of the videos with practice. Just practice. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to find that you're wrong about something, right? Because that's how you learn. Okay, so we have this. How do we get this one? Well, this is an array with one element. So there are no commands. So that means an array with one element. So we can either do this, like we can access that element, so assigning it to a variable, and then we have this variable with array with an element. And how do we access this? Same thing. So you see there is no magic or anything special going on. We get or one. Now there is some syntax that allows you to combine this step. So we can do both steps in the same time. So that means we can do this. We can do this 0. So we have to use 2 0 indexes, right? To get to or 1. That's like, think of this like you have an onion. An onion has layers, right? You want to get to the inner layer, so to the nucleus of, or the center or the kernel of the onion, you have to peel off the layers, right? You follow? You have to peel off the layers of the onion. So think of this one in here as the center of our onion. In this case, it's an array, but it's just an analogy so you get how to think about these nested structures, yeah. And to peel one layer of the onion, we first have to say, okay, we want to peel this specific layer. So you choose, there can be different layers, right? We can peel this particular layer of the array or of the onion. And what do we get? Well, you get what's inside. You get what's behind this layer. In this case is this element. So remember, the array elements are separated by these commas, right? So we get what's inside, and still we don't have what we want. We don't have the core of the onion. We don't have the specific element we're looking for. Well, what do we have to do? Do you have some ideas? Well, peel another layer. Take another layer of our onion. And in this case, I remind you that when I say onion, I'm referring, that's an analogy for our multi-level or multidimensional or multi-layer array. That all means the same thing. So we can take another layer by the indexing. And now we peel two layers. One where is the 0 index, and again the 0 index, because we only have one element, and that's the element we want, and we get it with a 0 index because the first element of this one element array. Okay, if we had two elements, then this would be, let me give you an example with two elements, right? Had in here 1, 4, 5, and we want, for example, now we have an array with 3 elements, right? If we want the 4, then we will do 1. And now the layers we are peeling off is the layer 0, and then in the current layer we are peeling off the layer 1. So this is the layers 1, 0, and 1. Now there is this syntax where we can combine these two steps into one step. So we can say A, which is our initial onion, whole onion, right? Or a whole array. And then we can do 0, right? That's our first layer. And then our second layer, in this case 1. Ta-da! That's how you combine both operations. There's no magic, nothing special. It's just combining the two operations into one. So what we're doing here, well, we're saying, okay, we want to take off this 0 layer, and that gives you the first element because arrays are 0 indexed. So that means we're starting from 0. So we get the first element, which is this. And then we have this, at this point we have this, and we want the 4. So we say, okay, give me the element on index 1. And that's why we get 4. And here it's the same thing, only that we're getting this one. Now, what if you have a hash? What happens if instead of arrays you have hashes? Well, it's the same thing. It's the same thing, only that you're going to use hash operations. You're going to treat whatever you get back as a hash, right? So let me show you how that would work. Let's say that this is hash, and in this hash we have A1, and we want this A1. How do we get to it? Well, first we have an array. That's the outermost layer. We want to remove this layer by asking for the element, by asking for the element that we want, for the layer that we want. This case is 0. Why? Because it's the first element. Then we do that. What do we get? Is a hash. Now, how do we work with hashes? Hashes work with keys. So now we have to switch into using the key. So the key is A, right? And as a result, we get 1. So that's it. That's how you work with multidimensional or nested arrays. Okay, so I hope that helps. And we have some comments in the YouTube. So we have Emilio Contreras says, hi, can you use last and first in range, like first, last? Yes, you can do that. You can indeed do that. You can do, if we do have, 1, 2, 3, You can do from 1 to -1. So that means all of them. But you can narrow this range if you want a smaller range. Then we have Jigar Bahad. He says, great knowledge sir. Thank you. And then we have Wiki. He says, hello, hello. And then we have Juan Vázquez. He says, will you explain numeral? Well, numeral, there's a lot of things. You can write 800. Yes, you can. Exactly. You can do that. Arthur Mentor. So that's just reading me reading some of the comments. So with that done, I wanted to show you something else. So I was working on a coding exercise to practice my skills. I came up with this particular exercise that asks you to, well, it gives you an array. So it's an array of strings. It's like %w. It says this is a cat. It asks you to, given another string, like let's say this, find all of the words that start with this string. So this in Ruby is very easy. We just take the string, or in this case an array of strings, and we just select those that start with this. So we can do select S start with, and this is why it's very important to be super familiar with Ruby methods, which you can do with my Ruby book, Ruby Deep Dive. So we can say start with what? Well, start with I. That gives you a list of the words that start with that. Very simple, very easy. But no, in JavaScript, there is no start with question mark that I know of, right? Maybe there is and I didn't find it, or I don't know about it. So how would we do this in JavaScript? Just so we can compare. Well, we can come here and already do this. We have here a JavaScript function. You can see it's working. Okay. So how does this work? Well, we define a function called find, and by the way, it is Firefox. And inside Firefox, there is this console, and in this console, there is like this JavaScript editor where you can run your code and see the output right away. So in here we have a split, and there is a split in JavaScript. There is also a split in Ruby, of course. And then we have a for, which, very important, we don't use for in Ruby. Don't ever use for in Ruby. Why? Because we have enumerable, and enumerable is much better for Ruby. It's more what we call idiomatic, which means that it looks like Ruby. It makes, when you use enumerable, it makes your code look like Ruby. Also, the different numeral methods are very easy to switch up. So here's a quick example. In here, instead of the list, I just want a count. Well, it's very easy. I just change, select for count, done. You can't do this if you're using something like the for method. And by the way, it also works differently in Ruby. It doesn't work with these 3 steps, 3 things. Okay, for JavaScript, I think it's kind of fine because there is no proper enumerable built in. Ruby is very nice because you see, with exactly the same block, I change the method and I change the result with no extra effort. Very nice, right? So that's why you use enumerable in Ruby and never for. If you use for, then you will look like a complete beginner, a complete noob to anyone that knows anything about Ruby. Okay, so that's your tip of the day. If you want to look more like a professional Ruby developer, use more enumerable methods like select or discount or others. There are many of them. Okay. Also, if you use this, you will impress people in a technical coding interview. Unless they specifically ask you to use something else. That's another thing. Okay, so let me quickly check the chat. Let's see if there is something new. Okay, no new chat messages as far as I can see. Okay, so that's okay. So in here, I saw another solution that used JavaScript, and it was a lot more complicated like this. It used another loop, and it used multiple variables. It's not necessary to do that, because I figured out that you can just take a slice of the string. So that would look something like this in Ruby. We can take this, and we know how long this string is. It's one string size. So we can just take that, and then we can compare this directly with this, right? Because they are the same size, and they're at the start of the string. Start with, right? So I came up with this idea, and it seems to work pretty good. So slice is basically a method that allows you to do this, to get a slice of the array. I mean, in this case, of the string. And you can do the same thing in Ruby. You can get the first letter, the first two letters, first three letters, and the same syntax works for arrays. So that's very nice that in Ruby, a lot of things translate intra-language. That means in the different parts of the same language, a lot of these things translate. So you know the same syntax works with arrays, and it works with strings. Now, because now this exists, this way of getting a slice or a piece of the string, I thought, oh, how do I do the same in JavaScript, right? And I remember there is this slice method, and then I can do the same. So I get that piece, this slice, it's like a slice of pizza, right? Instead of slice of pizza, get a slice of the string. And that gives me a slice of the particular word. So we are iterating or going over or looping over the list of words which is given to you, which is this. And then we check if that is equal to our search or target word. If it is, we return it and we are done. Right, this we end the function just like in Ruby. Only that in Ruby we don't say function, we say def, which stands for define. Define. That's for Ruby. Or in JavaScript we use function. And if that ends, we return -1, which in JavaScript we use to signify nil. Basically, it is like nil. I think there is also undefined in JavaScript, things like that. But specifically, this challenge specifically asks for -1 as the return value if not found. That's what this -1 means. You might also find this in other programming languages like C, like the C programming language also uses like -1 to signify nil or not found, right? So there it is, and of course we can run it as I already showed you. Can run the program and we can see the output right there. So that's it for this little challenge. And we have a question from Arthur Menter. So Arthur Menter, to answer your question, yes, it is. Pry is better than IRB. Why? Well, let me show you. If I exit Pry, I go to IRB. If I type string, see, has no color. You see that? It's white. This white and this not white. It has no color. So the color, this called syntax highlighting, is the same kind of color that you get in your editor. And the purpose, or why this is helpful, is you can more easily distinguish or see the different components of your code. So for example, here we can see more easily, okay, these are integers, these are numbers, and these are the square brackets. But in IRB, we don't have this color, and therefore it's harder to say. So that's one of the things. Also, IRB has less autocomplete function. So that's another thing. So in here we can do, if I try to autocomplete for like size, I get something that has nothing to do with size. So I type SI, I get something that has nothing to do with the method that I want. Right? I don't get size. I'm pressing the tab key, I don't get anything. If I go to prime, if I type string, tab SI, I get a list. I press the tab key twice. I get a list of methods that start with SI. So that's yet another super useful thing that you get inside Pry. So yes, in general, Pry is better than IRB, and I like that very much. Also Pry has a few other features that you can find out. By the way, I talk about this in my Ruby book. It's called Ruby Deep Dive, which is right here. It is the book. I made the cover myself as well. I use a template, but still I made the cover myself. So I think that's pretty cool. Of course, the contents I also made myself. Everything. And I think you're going to enjoy it if you like the topics that we're talking right here today. The very first chapter is about Pry and its benefits and some tricks that a lot of people don't know that you can do with Pry. So thanks for your question. I hope that helps. And by the way, you can find this on rubyguides.com. Okay, rubyguides.com. That's my website. Thanks for the answer. Yeah, you're welcome. By the way, also remember to click the like button on this video. That helps get more people in here and more people getting this free information and learning. Also subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on these live streams and new videos when I publish them. Okay. By the way, the subscription and views have been increasing, so thanks a lot for your support and for watching. Okay, so what else can we cover? Yes, I mentioned that I will cover learning trick or tip. I already kind of talk about it, and the tip is to notice what's different about things. So here's what I mean. When we have methods like select and count, if you want to learn how they work, here's a few things you can do. First, find a description or a definition. You can find multiple definitions or descriptions for the same thing that have similar meanings. What that we do is it will help you like triangulate what the thing really is, right? Another thing you can do that's very important is to find distinctions. So you will notice one of the things that makes an expert developer or an expert anything, expert scientist, expert writer, an expert anything is that they can make more and finer distinctions. They can tell, oh, this is why this is different than this, and this is when I would use this is when I would use this something else. This is the little thing that's different that will make this really useful in this situation, right? Or if these little distinctions or differences is what is one of the key components to learning and is one of the key components to becoming an expert or master any subject. Not only programming, but any subject that you want to become good at, is to pay attention to these differences. What makes things different from the other thing? And who are the same? That's also related. It's like the inverse. So the inverse of something being the same is something being different. And something being different inverse something being the same. So everything has something that's the same. So two persons, like we have the typical Alice and Bob, right? So Alice and Bob, the same thing is that they are both persons. The difference is that one is female and one is male, right? That's one simple example so you understand what I'm talking about. In here, what's the same between select and count? Well, the same is there are enumerable methods. Enumerable methods. Okay? And that's very important. Now, what's different? Well, different is what they do. This is used to select, to choose, to pick, to filter. And see what I did there? I'm giving you different words for the same thing. You can sort of triangulate what this really is, right? It's like a filtering method. And what it gives you is an array. And here, the name already says what it is. It's counting. It's counting. What's it counting? Well, it's counting what you have in the block. So that's strings that start with this other string. What do we get as a result? We get a number, an integer. So that's your difference. We have a different in function. So this is a filtering mechanism. This is a counting mechanism. So these two different functions, but we also have a difference in the result, in the output. We call this output, right? What a method produces, it takes input. That's what you give it. In this case, the input will be the block. So the input is what you put in, what you give it. It's like a coffee machine. A coffee machine needs inputs. It needs water, it needs the coffee beans or ground coffee, right? And probably needs some electricity to function. So that's the inputs for the coffee machine. And what does it produce? Well, the coffee drink, right? The liquid coffee, it produces that for you. So that will be the output. In the same fashion or in the same idea, we can apply to methods. Methods take something, sometimes parameters, in this case a block, and they produce something which is the output. So the output in the case of select, it's an array, right? And the case of count is an integer. So that's the second difference that we can clearly identify here. And the difference is that this produces one thing, one type of object, and this produces another type of object. So if you want to deeply understand this, you would do this for different methods, different Ruby methods, different Ruby classes. You will apply the same thinking process, right? And you could take notes in this. So you can write, okay, select and count are both numerable methods. That's the sameness. That's what's the same between them. And then you can say select, and now you can talk about the differences. Select is used, so now we are talking about function, is used for filtering a list. And then we can say, as a result, it outputs an array. So that's the second difference. And then we can say count, again, function is used for counting. And as a result, that's the second difference, it outputs an integer. And now we have a better view of not only how select and count are related to each other, but also how select and count work by themselves. So we get a better understanding individually and collectively as a relation between these two methods. Okay, so you can apply the same thing, the same method. Yes, it takes more time than just trying to memorize everything, but this is how you get real understanding, is by applying this process to everything. You can apply this process to everything. You can ask different kinds of questions. You can search Google for different definitions of things. So if you don't know what a method is, you can search for different definition of methods until it makes sense to you. You can search for examples of methods. That's another thing. Search for examples. Search for definitions, right? And that will help you come up into what the real meaning, the real understanding of what something is. So I hope that you find that helpful and apply it. Very important. Okay, so we have some chat comments. We have Ashix, hope I pronounced that correctly, Shish Kular. What is singleton class and singleton method and real life implementation? That's an interesting question. Thanks for asking. And we have Arthur Mentor. You should announce streams. I think more people will come. Yeah, maybe. Thanks for the suggestion. So singleton class and singleton method. There's different things. Okay? Singleton method is class method, basically. Okay, so that's what we typically call a class method in Ruby. An implementation of that will be like, we have maybe, I don't know, like a cat, cats to meow, right? But we can say instead of being something that belongs to instances, maybe belongs directly to the class. And we can say meow, meow. And we can say cat, meow. That's the singleton method. Okay? Now what's a singleton class? Singleton class. Well, the singleton class is where class methods are defined. Okay? And that's a special class in Ruby. It's kind of hidden because you don't see it, but that's a class where, that's where methods are defined. okay? Because I explain this with more pictures and things in my book. It's hard to demonstrate without explaining more things right here and without pictures. But yeah, it's like a special class that you have. You can access it. Singleton class. There you go. You don't do any. There is no implementation for this. This just happens for you. There is something different. That's why it's important, this thing I explained about sameness and difference technique. Looking for definitions and examples. Is that there is something else called singleton pattern. This is different that I just explained. How is this different? Well, this is a design pattern. It's used, it has nothing to do with this. So that's the main difference. The difference is that it's used when you want one copy of one class. So let's say we have a DB class for some reason. We only want one of these. We only want to create one, not more than one. Now I'm creating multiple DBs, but maybe we only want one DB, one database object. And the singleton pattern, not a singleton class, but a singleton pattern, allows you to create a class that can only be instantiated once. Okay? There is one way to do that. Let's see, singleton. Why singleton? Okay, so that's a singleton class, right? We can do this. db include singleton. Actually, that's a module. Singleton class. See? Now we can do this instance. And that's always the same object. And what happens if we try this? Any guesses? There we go. We can't. It's not allowed. Because new became a private method. So thanks for your question. I hope that answers it. And as a quick reminder, if you like this kind of content, make sure to click the like button so more people can find this. Subscribe to the channel and enable notifications so you don't miss these live streams or any new videos, and visit my website rubyguides.com. If you want to support my work, besides doing these things, you can share my articles, you can share the videos, and you can also buy a copy of my book. It will support my work because this is all I do, teaching Ruby and learning things, so I can teach you. It helps if you buy the book. Of course, it also helps you if you read it and study it and do what I recommend in the book. Okay, so and if you already buy it, or a lot of people already bought the book, so thank you very much if you already bought the book. I enjoy it. Thank you. Okay. So that's about it. Do you have any other questions? We have no more questions right now. So I'm going to give you a moment in case you have any other questions that you want to ask before we end this. By the way, if you're getting started, just getting started with programming in general, don't do multiple languages, don't do multiple libraries. I've seen people that are starting, they have like 50 tabs open trying to learn everything. I think that is going to confuse you. I don't think it's the better approach. Better approach is to go deep and focus on one thing until you have a solid understanding of that one thing. The good thing is that in Ruby, a lot of the basic concepts apply to other programming languages, as I showed you today. So in JavaScript, of course, you have arrays, you have methods, we have the concept, you have if statements, have return statements. Arrays work the same way, right? Arrays start with a 0 index and you access them with square brackets. So a lot of things like that. Also, you have the 2 equal signs. All of these fundamentals of programming, they are applied to multiple programming languages. So it's okay to go all in into Ruby. Then you can, when you feel more comfortable with that and you build your first project, then you can start expanding into learning other things. Particularly, I cover JavaScript because it's helpful as a full stack Ruby on Rails developer, right? You're probably going to be asked to at least know the basics of JavaScript as a full stack developer. And that means, if you're not familiar with full stack, that means front end, back end, front end, back end. So the front end is what the user is going to see. So that's the design, the website design, the website content, and also different effects that you can do with JavaScript, like changing things on the site while the site is already loaded into the browser, right? And different kind of animations or things you can do with JavaScript. And the back end is basically everything that you do with Ruby and Rails, right? That's working with the database, that's working with controllers, making decisions, working with data, deciding login, who can log in, who's authorized to access specific pages, who can access like your admin panel if you have one, sending emails if you're sending emails from your application, all of that. So the real important stuff, the actual work, happens in the back end. So it's very important, the back end. But to be able to see that as something the user can use and consume and benefit from, you actually have to create the user interface in the form of the front end, right? So that's front end would be HTML plus CSS for the design and some JavaScript. No, JavaScript, some people over value, but it's not, the truth is not necessary to build a professional application. It's an add-on, it's an enhancer, right? Yes, it can make your application better, but you can make a working, nice looking site without JavaScript. In fact, there are people that block JavaScript in their browser. So your site should be able to work without JavaScript. That's what I'm saying. You don't overvalue, don't buy into the hype of JavaScript frameworks, right? So there is that. But still you want to learn a bit about it when you are comfortable with Ruby and the basics of programming. Okay. Okay. What is the best place to practice Ruby, like exercise websites? Well, there are many exercise websites. There are a few like Code Wars, and there are more, maybe slightly more advanced one. Like there is one called Leet Code, Leet Code, like elite, for the E at the start. There are many. You can Google for coding exercises. Many of them have the option for testing your answers with Ruby. If they don't have that, you can still take the exercise and do it on your own in Ruby, right? You can also come up with your own little projects, like how you can do something that already exists and make into a Ruby program. By that I mean, for example, open your phone. What are some of the basic applications that come with your phone? Like built-in application like your phone book, I mean the contacts, right? How would you make a contacts application in Ruby? That would be one idea. Or how would you make like a calculator or a task list, right? I'm looking at my phone right now. That's the kind of things that came with the phone, right? Things like that. Or a note-taking application. How would you make that with Ruby? All of these things you can make. And if you have a question about can you make X with Ruby, the question is probably yes. Now the amount of work that you will need to do that is going to change, right, between languages, because there are languages that already give you a lot of libraries and tools to do specific things. But Ruby is a generic or general programming language, which means you can do anything you want with it, only that the specifics are going to take more work or less work, more specific special knowledge or less special knowledge, right? So that's the only difference, but you probably can do anything that you want with it. We have a few more questions I missed. With it, a gem like cellular died. Well, I don't know. I'm not the maintainer, it's just no longer maintained. So there is that. You will have to ask the maintainers about that. For the celluloid. What do you think performance for Rail and Ruby? I think the performance is fine. A lot of the slowness that you can find is probably because of your database queries, in RX application, database queries, inefficient use of methods and algorithms, things like that. But it's fine for like 99% of websites. It's going to be fine in terms of performance. Also, Ruby 3 is going to get a performance boost top of that. Okay, how different is Jest promise different from concurrent Ruby promise? That I don't know. I'm not familiar with that. Okay. So that's about it. Thanks a lot for watching, and thanks for your support. Again, if you want to learn more, you can watch more videos in the channel. There are over 100 videos you can watch right now in the channel. And you can also read a lot of articles in my website, rubyguides.com. And thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.